Everybody, and thank you for joining us at this regular meeting of the Madera City Council. Today is Wednesday, November 4th. The time is 6 p.m. And this meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. The City Council meeting will be live streamed on the city's website. Members of the public may participate in the meeting remotely through an electronic meeting via phone by dialing 669-900-6833 and enter ID number 918-3685-1693#, followed by *9 on your phone if you wish to speak. We will also receive comments via email at citycouncilpubliccomment@madera.gov. I will ask our city clerk to call roll, please.
Mayor Medellin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Gallegos.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Montes.
Here.
Councilmember Robinson.
Present.
And Councilmember Hawley.
Was that a here, Councilman?
Present.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate that. As we start every meeting, we will start with our invocation. And if you're able to stand, please join Pastor Fred Thurman from New Life Assembly of Madera, who will lead us in this evening's invocation. Pastor Fred, good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor Andy. Heavenly Father, we thank you this evening for the opportunity to gather and to consider the many different items that are on the agenda for this City Council meeting. We thank you, Lord, that you are desirous to give us great wisdom and understanding in the running of our city and the blessing of our city. So we thank you that you bless the meeting, bless the city councilmen, bless those that have items on the agenda today or speaking. And we thank you, Lord, that your will be done. And we pray for the salvation of our city in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor Fred. And now if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance
To the United States of America, to for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. And now we'll move into the approval of the agenda. I'll ask my colleagues if there's any changes or requests or any items pulled on this evening's agenda. Seeing none, I'll call for the approval.
Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by Councilwoman Gallegos to approve this evening's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously for this evening's agenda. Moving on to public comment, the first 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked but are not required to identify themselves and state the subject of their comments. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking the speaker to hold the comment until that item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held until the hearing is opened. The council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time. I will ask our city clerk if there's any written public comment via email.
No, Mayor, none received.
Thank you very much, Alicia. And I do not see any attendees wishing to speak, so I'll close public comment and move into our first presentation, which is this is the Department of Public Health. Ms. Boss is with us again this evening to give us some more information regarding COVID-19 and our status. Ms. Boss, good to see you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I am happy to report the data that was released today. Usually it's Tier Tuesday, but this week, because of the election, they postponed it and released the data at noon today. We have data that qualifies us for the first week of the 2 weeks required for red. It's confusing because our case rate is in the purple. Our adjusted case rate, which is what's used for the tier, is 7.5. We need to be at 7 or less to be in the red. But our positivity rates for both the county and our health equity area are both in the orange. And so when you have that both in the orange, it actually qualifies you for an exception. And if we do this same next week, or if our case rate is in the red and our positivity rates are in the red, then we'd be able to move forward. So our county positivity rate is 4.2. The threshold is 5%. Equity positivity is 4.8. The threshold is 5.2. So again, it requires a second week, but that's a positive thing. The reason that this happened is that our testing increased by 18%. And so the adjustment factor is impacted, but the positivity rate for both the county and the HPI area is impacted. So we are focusing a lot of those testing resources on the HPI area, much of which is in the city of Madera. So I think the most important thing that needs to be carried forward to your council, and as you're working with others, is to encourage residents, business owners to have their staff tested regularly, and anyone who's out and about to be tested every 4 to 6 weeks. We need to maintain this testing volume as much as possible in our HPI area, in particular in the city of Madera. Our OptumServe site is the easiest one to promote. It's not maximized as a resource. In fact, there's lots and lots of available appointments. It's easy to register. People can go to our website, which is maderacounty.com/COVID-19 testing, and they'll get all of the locations in addition to the OptumServe site at the fairgrounds, as well as that one. And the URL is there for them to be able to register. You can pick appointments at the fairgrounds site, but you can also just register, take your registration number, and walk in at any time. So that test site is open and available from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day except Thursday and Sunday. So I'll stop there. I think that's the most pertinent information for everyone. The one additional thing I'll mention is that we are working with the police department and code enforcement and providing information to them with regards to either complaints or information that's sent to us or that we observe as public health staff with businesses that are not operating within guidance or gatherings, things, community events, and working with our law enforcement partners and code enforcement to help us with compliance with regards to that. And again, the approach has been in Madera County as much as possible, providing education and support for businesses and residents to be able to follow the guidance. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. I'm sorry, I couldn't get to that.
No, go right ahead, Mr. Councilman.
Sarah, so, as we go further into this, not say isolation, but social distancing, people around the community start getting restless when it comes to parks and what have you. There are a group of folks that participate in either soccer clubs, baseball, and what have you, that have brought up the question if we have certain guidelines that would align with the county public health department, can they reach a certain agreement or something that can allow them to participate in some type of outdoor sport in the park? And I know you've probably had this come to you quite a bit here, but I figured I'd ask you at this point, where does the county public health stand?
So we need to follow the state guidance. And I know that they're still looking at sporting events and in terms of what's allowed in each tier. And so that's still an ongoing conversation. In the purple, then of course, we're still following the guidance of not having organized sports. But as we move into red, there'll be opportunities for certain types of recreation. And it's basically going to be based on how much kind of physical contact there is related to that sport, how close they are, and whether or not they're in physical contact with each other. Unfortunately, that does mean that a lot of the sports that are really popular, like soccer, things like that, are closer in terms of distance and more contact. So they probably would not be allowed until later in the tiers. baseball, I think, is one of the ones that's earlier in terms of being allowed. And so as that kind of rolls out, we would certainly communicate that out with you so that you're able to kind of make those announcements to folks. On our website, which is just like the testing one, except without the testing at the end, /COVID-19. There's information, it's under the button of businesses. And if you look at that, then it has like the tier structure and what's allowed in each tier. And I think that's super helpful to be able to look forward and make plans for what's open and to what degree in each tier.
Thank you, Sarah. So, I think we've all had to adapt more so to this COVID stuff. And I think even in the sports world, they're starting to adapt different ways of participating when it comes to social gatherings and what have you. So although soccer might not be something that falls in within the guidelines of the state, would any club that modifies the way they do their sport, would that be something that the county would be willing to look at, as far as, maybe just out there practicing and doing some type of social distancing type of exercise or practice, so to speak? And I know that when they categorize soccer, obviously they differentiate that from baseball because of the contact in it. But I mean, people and/or organizations are having to modify the way they do things because of this social distancing. So if a plan was presented to the county that would meet guidelines of similar like sports, would that be something that the county would consider when we meet those tiers?
So the short answer is we definitely want to support physical activity. And we think that it's great if people want to present to us plans for how it can be done safely. And I do think that there are lots of things like drills and stuff like that that could be done safely. It's just a matter of us really talking that through with the state and making sure that we're not violating state guidelines. So, the state has been very receptive to what can be done safely and how can we, put forward things in which we're flexible. For people to be able to try and as much as possible resume their regular or different but regular activities. And so if there's a group of people that have a plan of or an idea of how something could be done safely through adapting it, we definitely would receive that and we would work with the state to see if we could get it approved. And we're advocating for things like that all the time.
So this would be more of a county to state basis, not a coalition of counties, but rather Madera County presenting to the state directly. This is a plan in place at the city of Madera. What are your recommendations?
So what often happens is that the state receives ideas from across the state about a lot of different things. And it's not uncommon for an idea to crop up in multiple places across the state at the same time. So we elevate all of those because it can benefit everybody across the state to understand hey, there might be an opportunity for us to do this. If we can get it approved by the state, then it could be rolled out to everyone. And that's really a better route than trying to do it county by county with different kinds of things. Because what happens is then it ends up being very confusing. And then other counties go, well, how come that one's approved and that one's not? And it really does work well if we have a great idea. We work with the state has been very receptive, and then other counties can kind of say, well, we have something similar, and then the guidance ends up being developed and it's applicable to everyone.
Okay, so you're not discouraging from these folks coming to the county public health and introducing these ideas and try to get some type of guidance for them. And I don't mean specifically to soccer, but I'm sure there's other contact sports that are probably not yet acceptable in these tiers. But obviously with the modifications that they would do, like you said, for drills and what have you, then I think they would certainly meet those guidelines. But I will relay that information, and hopefully if they have any additional questions, one, I can turn them to the site, or I can at least have them speak to the county public health for any additional information.
The best thing to do is to use the community feedback form that's on our website. It's one of the blue buttons on the main page that says community feedback form. And they can say, you know, we have a plan, we'd like to discuss it. And I don't know if there's an ability to attach a document there, but at least they can start that conversation, and then it's easier for us to be able to communicate that. But we absolutely welcome ideas for how people can do things safely. We would far rather enter into a conversation and figure it out together than to have folks just say, like, forget this, can't do it, and then just not comply, because that creates a lot of issues between us and the state. When we try and negotiate things like around the tiers, they ask us, are you enforcing? Are you, is your community really following the guidance? Things like that. So we would really love to engage with the community around ideas that they have to do things safely.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, I will relay that information, and hopefully, if they do have something, I'll turn them to that form there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Garcia.
Yes, good evening, Sarah. Thank you for the update. Always appreciated. I have a very simple question. I'm not sure if you've answered it in the past. Regarding the testing, the blood bank has set up mobile testing as long as they have enough folks to come out and participate to be able to give blood through a mobile vehicle. Do we have anything like that regarding testing in maybe larger businesses, or where we can get the best bang for our buck? Like, for instance, city hall employees or county employees, where we would set up a testing at the site. Is there anything like that possible?
We have a mobile testing unit that's run by our department, and we have been scheduling. They are able to do basically one test site per day at this point. We've been scheduling them at the locations in which we can pull in the greatest number of people, and really focusing on that HPI area because it impacts our positivity rate. And it's also our population that has the greatest issues with regards to access to healthcare and lots of other, factors that make it difficult for them, like crowded housing, things like that. So as we have state resources that are going to be deployed in these HPI areas in the next couple weeks, we're in very active conversations. They're rolling out additional test sites. And I was on the phone with Dr. Galley yesterday, and he said that because we are one of 9 counties left in purple, and because our board has been proactive in reaching out, we have a phone call scheduled this Friday. He said that they were going to be disproportionately investing into Madera with regards to testing. So testing resources are coming from the state, and what that's going to do is free up our resources with mobile testing to be able to go out to smaller test sites that we haven't been able to prioritize, and also to situations where there might be outbreaks. So you'll see a much bigger increase. And if there's a need for testing, we always encourage you to reach out if you have an idea or if there's a specific need, and we'll do our very best to accommodate.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions of Ms. Boss? Always very informative, Sarah. We always thank you and appreciate you being with us this evening. And as always, we know you have an open door policy. Your phone number's out there to call you or any of your team or staff at any time. Thank you very much for the information, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for that red tier, orange tier coming up soon.
Let's hope.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Moving on to the consent calendar, I'll ask my colleagues if there's any item on the consent calendar you wish to pull or further discuss. Seeing none, I'll call for action on consent.
I so move to approve consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Councilwoman Gallegos and seconded by Councilman Rodriguez to approve the consent calendar as written. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Looks like we got 5 ayes and a thumbs up by Councilman Hawley. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. We have no public hearings this evening, so our first item is item D1. This is agreement for professional legal services with Telecom Law Firm PC to update the city's municipal code regulating wireless facilities. And I believe Mr. Conti will take this one for us this evening. Gary?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm going to present to you and share my file or my screen with you in regards to this particular presentation. All right, I would hope that you're seeing the entirety of my screen. I suppose my notes is.
Gary, right now we're seeing your notes. You may want to swap screens so we can see the entirety of your screen if that's okay.
My apologies. All right. Are we there now for you folks?
Not quite.
Huh.
If you want to swap screens.
I did, yeah, I'll start from the beginning. Here we go. Okay,
Perfect.
perfect. Now we're gone. My apologies to that end. All right, tonight I'm presenting to you an agreement for professional services, professional legal services with for telecom law firm for the purpose of updating the city's municipal code, which regulating the wireless facilities. And why this is important is our current codes lack regulations specifically tailored to wireless facilities. And generalized standards and procedures thus far for issuance of communications, whether there are cell towers or other types of facilities associated with cell towers. And as we move forward to G5 or 5G, excuse me, it's going to be completely little different as to what we've been experiencing. So the issue is how we handle use permits. Right now are kind of too loose in some respects and too restrictive in other cases. Our code has not kept up with the regulatory changes in the wireless industry is probably the key issue at hand, and the gap in our city code limits the city's abilities to exercise its full authority and may expose actually the city to some liabilities for the failure to follow federal and state laws that have been enacted and will be coming forth to us here for the first of the year. What I mean by our abilities to control what or what does not happen, that image there to your left is a good example of if we don't have our codes in order, these are the types of situations that you will find, and not in just one or two places in your community, but you can find this virtually almost block to block. So what's really needed? Foremost, what we need to do is to do a comprehensive update for our city's municipal code, that regulates our wireless facilities. We need to evaluate our city's current policies and practices as how we handle wireless facilities as far as the permitting process. And we need to develop applications and a checklist and worksheets that specifically address new wireless sites, modifications to some of the existing ones. We are experiencing that at an accelerated rate at this moment, and some standby power generators that facilitate wireless facilities in the event there's a power shortage. And then more importantly then is getting the staff and planning trained on current and state and federal regulations that regulate the processing and permitting of wireless facilities. For example, today, a wireless entity can file an application with the city, and upon receiving that application, we in essence have 10 days to act. And if we do not act within 10 days, it's a free and open circuit to the wireless companies. And most often not, then you get what I showed in that first diagram of an image, conceivably. That is the cheapest route for the wireless companies to construct their needs, as opposed to perhaps providing a wireless communication devices that it can be appended to your light poles or something similar like that you have a better control on your aesthetics in your community. So recognizing the staff is not well versed in wireless communications, our recommendation is to retain a firm that is highly qualified in that field and is in fact an expert in that field. And what we believe is that telecom law firm PC is that expert in the telecommunication wireless field. In fact, that is all they do. They are experienced in formulating telecommunications and wireless ordinances. They are experiencing and formulating telecommunications and wireless permit applications. and processes. More importantly, they are experienced in providing education to staff in statutes regulating wireless industry. This firm does go and provide educational programs throughout the United States, has presented cases before the Supreme Court, and again, as I mentioned earlier, this is their field. The cost to provide this services is a total sum of $42,700. And what would be required to finance this particular agreement would be to apply or take unassigned funds from our city's general fund. And that would require, of course, a funding source that is subject to council appropriations. So with that, the recommendation is that City Council adopt a resolution approving an agreement with Telecom Law Firm, PC, for the professional law legal services and authorizing our finance director to transfer the $42,700 from the city's 2020-21 unrestricted general fund reserve into the account contracted services legal within the planning department's 2020-21 budget account. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I also have online one of the consultants from Telecom Law for Mr. Tripp May that can assist in answering any questions you may have. That ends my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. I appreciate that. And just for the record, for clarification, in the agenda, it is noted the amount of $37,100, but you had said 42,700. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you add the two numbers together, there is a base cost plus an ad hoc services of an additional 5,000.
I just wanted to be sure that for those that saw the agenda.
Yes, it is. It adds for the
The
total.
language is on the recommendation part of the agenda, Mayor, at the end of the recommendation, it includes the 5,600.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. So Gary, I know that on the report there, and you mentioned this, that the state and the federal government have certain certain restrictions on what a city can do, especially when it comes to these utility companies or the wireless. So how would this ordinance restrict from, we then would be able to recommend certain aesthetics as far as how they go about the putting certain poles?
That's correct. That would be the correct conditions. We cannot deny wireless facilities, but we can direct how and where they should be applied.
And what it looks like, right? Because based on that picture you put up there, I mean, obviously the aesthetics on a street light look really well. Is that what we would demand then, if that was the case?
If that is the leisure of the council, that would be correct. We can guide the kind of appearance and the locations, how they would appear.
Would there be any pushback on us requiring to go that far out as far as aesthetics and any surrounding area, like mitigation for like, I don't know, sidewalks or anything else when they add something like that?
Oh, you're asking to add additional measures in respect?
No, what I mean is whenever they add a pole, for example, of that nature, obviously it's got to be set somewhere. Would there be any mitigation for setting that pole, like surrounding area?
Mayor and council, maybe I can assist a little bit and then I'll call on Mr. May. The wireless industry is big and they have been successful in promoting both the federal government and the state to enact legislation that limits cities and other local agencies considerably. And right now, as Mr. Conti has noted, the city has nothing, has no ability to regulate anything. And unfortunately, you're coming in very late. And so when we were talking about the need for some regulations, we talked about me doing it in-house, but I really felt that you needed some quick action and somebody that knows all the nuances. and has everything regarding the most recent legislation and what's before Congress and before the state legislature as well. And it was actually your city manager that suggested this firm, and I have worked with this firm before, and so we contacted them, and that's how they came to submit their proposals. Mr. May is on the line, and maybe he can walk you through a little bit on the parameters. There are limitations. You can't, the cities, it's not like the old days where you could have all sorts of regulations. But to the extent that the city can enact regulations to ensure that your city is not blighted with these structures and equipment, that is the intent of the ordinance and the regulations. And that's why both the city manager, my office, and Mr. Conti are recommending moving forward with this. So Mayor, if we can have Mr. May address the council on this.
Absolutely, of course. Mr. Mayor, are you with us?
He said he was having problems getting unmuted or something, but I thought he was in.
He currently appears to be muted. I'm not sure if that's something maybe Mark.
Is he on, where is he? Is he on the phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an attendee. I don't know if he hit *9 or not.
I'm asking him to unmute.
So Hilda, well, we bring Mr. And I'm sorry, what was his? I didn't catch his name.
His name is Robert May.
Robert May. So while Mr. May is getting it back up, I will ask the question. I know you said that we're late in the game, but in adding this to the ordinance, would that allow us to go back to certain structures that have been placed in the city? For example, if maybe 2 or 3 years ago,
I think that would be very, very difficult. I think he's on now, so I'll send it over to him, but I don't think that that's going to be possible.
Yeah, I believe he's with us.
I
Mr. Mayor,
am.
you with us?
Thank you. I heard enough of. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
I heard some suggestions about which buttons to push, and it was very helpful. So thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Robert May. I'm the managing partner of Telecom Law Firm, and I'd be happy to explain a little bit about how these regulations work and why it's important to have an ordinance that implements the amount of control that you have left. So in a very high level view, the federal and state law takes a kind of cooperative approach where they put certain limitations on the exercise of your control, and only a few hard stops. But it's all about how you exercise it. So, for example, you cannot say no flatly to these facilities anywhere in the city. And you cannot say no on a case-by-case basis in a way that effectively amounts to a prohibition. Likewise, you can't discriminate against functionally equivalent service providers, so fair play. And you can't regulate the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions when they already comply with the FCC's rules. But other than that, your zoning authority is more or less preserved for most of the facilities that you'll likely see. So it's sort of a situation where you have all of your normal powers unless you run into a situation where you don't. And having an ordinance that's tailored to these types of specific developments that lets staff know what's in play, makes a clear path for applicants to know what the city wants to see that could be approved and what they don't want to see that will be denied, and then lays out the procedures by which the city reviews them in the time that you're allowed to and makes a decision in the manner in which you're supposed to, protects the city from liability, and then gives that forum for exercising the discretion you have. In addition to that, there are certain categories of facilities, so certain modifications to existing sites that you just don't have any authority over. You can regulate them for health and safety. You can enforce certain prior conditions of approval and protect the concealment that was already there on a facility. But the FCC and Congress have seen fit to allow existing facilities to get bigger. And so being able to have local regulations that put those types of applications into the hopper, separate them into facilities and modifications that do qualify for automatic approval from those that don't, helps you to stay in pace with your obligations under federal law, avoid denying applications you shouldn't, and avoid approving applications without the conditions or the modifications to the facility that you might otherwise want. So it's about how you regulate, even though there are significant limitations. I also heard a question about going back in time to existing facilities. It is possible to amortize wireless facilities like any other development. But just like any other development, the amortization requirements have got to allow them to recover their investment. So we're not talking just a couple of months or even a couple of years. We're talking 10, 15, 20 years of amortization. But by the same token, the facilities can be time limited in their permit applications. And if they wanted to come in and do a modification that was not covered by that special rule requiring approval, you could treat it like an opportunity to bring them up to date with code, just like any other legal non-conforming use. So having those types of tools in the box will enable the city to protect its interests when it comes to the development of this infrastructure within its jurisdiction.
And Mayor and Council, one of the concerns that Mr. Conti had as well had to do with the time frames. There's something called a shot clock that's involved, and the city has very limited time to take action on these kinds of applications. So the city has nothing, and as the city's trying to figure it out on a case-by-case basis, it's very likely that many of these structures will be approved by what's called operation of law. And if you want Mr. May to more detail on this, but it does create liability if you don't.
That's true. And in addition to the federal law that applies to modifications and may automatically deem them approved if you don't act in time, there is a state law, AB 57, that would apply the same way to new macro facilities. So, towers that could be 50, 70, 100 feet tall. So it is important to maintain your place within that shot clock.
So, Robert, if I may, the last question that I had with regard to this this ordinance was we talked about aesthetics and stuff. Any chance for? I mean, I know that we're limited on certain things that we can do with these utility companies, but any mitigation that you can do for like areas that are desired, meaning surrounding area.
So do you mean like conditions of approval related to landscaping in the right of way?
Correct.
Around
Correct.
Yes. So to a degree, yes. There's a traditional, what lawyers call the Noll and Dolan analysis, right? So long as the mitigation is reasonably related to the harm that the mitigation is intended to address, and doesn't exceed reasonable value of the project, then you do have some flexibility. There are other limitations because we're in the right of way, so we may be limited in what kinds of space is available and what other utilities we may be able to control. So, for example, many electric utilities, particularly investor-owned utilities, will require specific types of meters, may require a larger box. We may not be able to avoid that, but we could potentially put it in a landscaped area or add some landscaping around it, that kind of thing.
Well, thank you. Certainly I'm not opposing this. This would be more like questions before we come to a consensus of approving it. But no, certainly I think the city it would be prudent for the city to look into its best interest, especially when it comes to aesthetics. As these things technology becomes more advanced, I think these utility companies that have the state and the federal law behind them can certainly, they can make their way in any way, shape, or form. So I feel that having an ordinance that dictates how they can do it and what mitigations we can take is a good thing for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Any questions from council for Mr. May or staff? Alicia, have we received any comments via email or otherwise?
No, Mayor.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll call for action on item D1.
So move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilman Hawley and seconded by Councilman Montes to approve item D1 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. May, for being on the line and answering our questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of the council. Have a great evening.
You too. Moving on to item D2, this is the overlay of the parking lots at Fire Station 56 and Fire Station 57. I know this has been a long time coming, and with the wet weather coming soon, this is something we want to move on as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members. Jerry Martinez is going to give a quick presentation on this, but I just want to go ahead and jump in before he started his presentation. Note that there was a discrepancy within the staff report. Table 1 indicates the correct bid from the low bidder, Dave Christensen Construction Company. When we go to Table 2, the item numbers are the contract award is not correct. It is actually, for the first one, Schedule A, $88,823, very close to what was shown there. But the Schedule B is shown as $92,052. It's actually $101,477. The resolution is correct, and the agreement is correct. It's just a discrepancy between Table 1 and Table 2. With that, Jerry can go ahead and move into his presentation. It's just a fairly quick one, as I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helmuth.
Jerry, you will need to unmute. Jerry? Jerry, you will need to unmute. Okay, the lower left-hand corner of your screen, Jerry, there is a microphone. Please click on that. I think that this is Jerry's first time with this.
That's okay. We've all been there.
You'll see a little camera and a microphone in the lower left-hand corner, Jerry. You'll want to click on the microphone. Mark, is it possible for you to unmute Jerry?
I've been trying, but I have to ask him to unmute, and I've been clicking the button. It hasn't been working.
You can also press Alt-A to unmute.
That was you, Arnoldo.
Yeah, that's a little tricks of the trade. I was actually doing it as Councilmember Montes said that. I was unaware of that trick. Thank you.
Jerry, if you push the Alt button down and the A button at the same time, it should unmute.
Keith, while Jerry's doing that, would you mind kicking us off and just?
I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, as the mayor indicated, this has been a long time coming. Both Fire Station 56 and 57 have parking lots that are they're beyond the state of minimal repair, so we will be reconstructing those parking lots. So what we did in the last couple months or so, actually we've been working on for some time, but we accelerated in the last couple of months or so. We took the projects out to bid. We did do plan sets for each of the locations, and in fact, on one of the stations, we are going to go ahead and reconstruct one of the driveway approaches. We did put out a advertisement for bid. There were 5 bidders. The low bidder is Dave Christensen Construction. They had a base bid A for Station 56, which was $88,823. For Station 57, there was $101,478. And then for the driveway approach, I believe that was $13,000. That totaled to $203,385. As such, Dave Christensen is the low bidder, and we do recommend that council award the bid to Dave Christensen Construction. If you have any questions, I will do my best, or I'll attempt to answer those. Otherwise, Well, I think I also have Victor Aldama on the line. He can go ahead and answer some questions as well. Thank you very much.
So, Mayor, if I may just point of clarification, if that's appropriate.
Of course.
On tables 1 and table 2, the total on table 2 is correct, 203,300 with 85 cents. However, if one were to add up the 3 rows, it adds up to $193,366. So again, the total is correct on table 2. However, the line items are just incorrect, where they are correct on table 1. So I do apologize for that. The agenda item was agendized properly. The subject line on the title is correct. So again, we simply had a couple of mistakes in a couple of the rows, in 2 of them, but the totals are correct. Thank you.
Exactly right. Thank you.
Was that the end of the presentation, Keith?
That was the end of the presentation, yeah.
Okay,
Short
thank you
and
very
sweet.
much. So I'll ask if there's any questions from council regarding item D2. Doesn't look like it, Keith. I'll ask our city clerk if there has been any public comment.
No, Mayor, none received.
No, great, thank you very much. So if there's no further questions or comments, I'll bring it back to council for action on item D2.
I so move to approve D2 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Gallegos and seconded by Councilman Montes to approve item D2 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief Watson, spread the good news.
I sure will. I appreciate it, council. Thank you. A special thank you to CC Gallegos for keeping us on the burner.
Great. Moving on to administrative reports, item E1. This is a discussion and status action taken on measures to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Arnoldo Rodriguez, City Manager. I'm not going to get into the different tiers because Sarah Boss earlier this evening so eloquently explained where the county's at. I do want to provide council with an update. As council is aware, we recently had a free giveaway of PPE at the Madera Fairgrounds. That was in partnership with the county, City of Chowchilla, Cal OES, EDC, and the Chamber of Commerce. We do have a relatively decent amount of PPE that's still available. The city yesterday sent out postcards to local businesses, and those went out to all local businesses. They are both in English and Spanish. Those went out yesterday, and I know of at least one person that received one today. So businesses are going to be receiving them. Our request is that if local businesses require PPE, this would be hand sanitizer, face masks, and face shields. We do have several 100,000 face masks available. We do have 1 gallon containers of hand sanitizer. This is free of charge. And this would be for the benefit of local businesses to provide for their employees. They can simply call the number and we would be more than happy to provide that. So again, if you know of any local businesses, help spread the word. I believe we've had over 240 local businesses benefit from the program, but our goal is to make sure that we're getting the PPE into the hands of local businesses to help their employees stay safe. So with that, thank you very much, Mayor, and I'll turn it back over to the council.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for that. Any questions of Mr. Rodriguez regarding that update? Short and sweet, thank you very much. That will do it for the regular agenda. We'll move into council reports, and I'll ask Councilman Robinson for his report.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gallegos.
Nothing to report.
Councilman Garcia.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilman Montes.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilman Rodriguez.
Well, more of a comment, Mr. Mayor, and I should have brought this up on the last item, only because when Sarah mentioned the provided document and/or plan for trying to provide some type of outdoor drills for these soccer clubs, would that be something that I can take to you, John, in conjunction with this group, or is that something that be best for them to go directly to the public health? Because it is in relation to the city parks.
Yeah, it would probably be best if we work together. So I can reach out to you tomorrow if you like, and we'll come up with a game plan. There are certain things that are allowed, but being that we're sort of tasked with enforcement and making sure that everything's done according to the plan, we should probably be in the loop.
Okay, then, yeah, I'll expect a call tomorrow, John, and you and I can go over that. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
No, nothing to report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Hawley.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, and I have nothing to report. So with that, I will ask our city attorney to move us into closed session.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have two items for you this evening. One is G1, Conference with Legal Counsel, Anticipated Litigation, Initiation of Litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9D4. And it's one case, City of Madera versus High Speed Rail Authority. And number two, Conference with Real Property Negotiators under Government Code Section 54956.8. Property, one parcel, APN number 035080026, agency negotiator Keith Helmuth, negotiating party Jason Sanders, under negotiation price.
Thank you very much, Hilda. And with that, everyone, have a good evening. We will now adjourn to closed session. Thank you.
Council met in closed session on the 2 items that were announced from the agenda. There is no reportable action.
Thank you very much, and this meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.